Hi, and welcome to Superintendents Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel from Thurston Community Media. It's our first roundtable of the school year, and we're glad to have back with us this year the superintendents from the Yelm Community Schools, North Thurston Public Schools, Olympia School District, and Tumwater Schools. So I want to thank you all for taking time in your busy schedules to join us. Brief introductions: Deborah Clemens from the North Thurston Public Schools, John Bash from Tumwater Schools, Brian Wharton from Yelm Community Schools, and Patrick Murphy from the Olympia School District. Welcome. So as we left our viewers hanging in May, we have a perennial conversation about school funding, and McCleary had been theoretically solved. But I'm wondering, was McCleary really solved? Did it really fix any problems? And you know, how has it impacted your budgets? And I'm going to start with you, Patrick, and we'll work our way this way. Because I know it wasn't necessarily the solution that people thought it might be.
Right. Well, we've talked about this before, and I think the answer to that question is, did McCleary solve it for some school districts? Yes. For other school districts? No. So it was an inequitable fix, and I think ever since it's been implemented, it's becoming more glaringly clear who was hurt and who was helped by that. One of the things that we talked about in the past, Deb, was there was a few things that hurt us particularly, I think in Thurston County, but I can speak specifically for the Olympia School District, was three things. One was there was this idea that we cut local levies dramatically and we replaced it with state dollars. And as long as that state dollars came in to equally match what we lost in our local levy, that'd be okay. That didn't happen for us. The second thing was this idea of regionalization, that in the last fix, there was an idea that certain school districts had a higher cost of living, so the legislature was going to give them an apportionment to pay for all of their costs, and then an extra amount because it costs more to live there. And there were 95 school districts about out of almost 300 that got that regionalization, but it was inequitable the way it went across the system, and we didn't get that in Olympia. And then the last thing was the elimination of the mix factor that we've talked about before, which is they no longer account for the fact that more experienced teachers cost more, so they give a blanket amount for every teacher. And if you have a lot of younger teachers, less experienced teachers, that's a windfall for you. If you have a much more experienced staff, you lose money. And Olympia is one of the more experienced school districts in the state. And so those three things together made us what I would say is a loser in the funding situation. Starting in 1920, we were required now to give budgets to the state for 4 years, and we're solvent in 1819, but we're in the red, and we have a deficit in 1920, 2021, 21-22. So it was not a fix for us in Olympia, and I don't think it was a fix for many districts across the state. My colleagues can tell you about the impact of them as well. So no, it didn't fix everything for everybody.
For you. Brian, how about Yelm?
I agree with a lot of what Patrick said, but I think the McCleary solution left several elephants in the room. And Yelm, just like Olympia, we're okay this year. We're able to do the things that we need to do. 1920 is a very tough year because not only are we the lowest funded from a state perspective, we also, our levy drops significantly, and we'll be at the bottom of that, the least amount to be collected. But the elephants in the room that really haven't hit yet, that are not fixes in this, the State Educators Benefits Board kicks in, and that is an unfunded problem for school districts. So we'll be paying more locally for the benefits that our non-full-time employees have next year, and those aren't accounted for in the allocation models. What is not fixed is there's a lot of direction or some direction on teacher salaries, but there's very little clarity on classified and administrative salaries, and those are clearly not funded, so that's not fixed either. And I think that what we're seeing around the state, there's a lot of short-term solutions, but for mostly everybody, 1920 looks really, really difficult, and it does in Yelm.
Okay. John, what about McCleary and Tumwater?
Yeah, I can confirm that Tumwater's in a very similar circumstance, but like you've heard, this coming year, the 18-19 school year, is frankly the best year any of us are going to have, because they're not taking the entire levy amount away it's kind of a gradual takeaway this year, but a full takeaway in 1920, and that's why you're hearing all of us say, wow. So if I put it into dollars and cents, I would tell you that our school board has committed to say, look, even with that challenge, we have to remain competitive in the local market in our compensation packages for employees, even if it means in the short term we have to dip into our savings account. So for this coming year, we're going to be $2.7 million out of balance, meaning I got to use that money out of our savings account called our reserve or our fund balance just to pay the bills. And next year, that to maintain those increases, it expands to $5 million that we would have to then find cuts for, because you can't use your savings account year after year to pay salaries. Once you spend it, it's gone. Folks are really having a hard time understanding that one right now, and it's not getting a lot of play in the media. That's why I've said to a lot of people, the headline this year is going to be big raises for employees, and you're already seeing that. And the headline next year will be massive cuts. And that's unfortunate, because unless the legislature does something significant to solve the inequity that Patrick talked about, that is what you're going to see. And I think the general public's going to be confused because they heard that billions of dollars has been put into education, and that's true, but in a very inequitable way. And so I'm worried in Tumwater that then we go back to our voters in a couple of years and ask for more levy money or to renew this reduced levy. And some voters might be asking, well, why would I vote yes when my taxes didn't go down and now you're wanting more, and the headline said you got billions more? That's a real challenge politically, I think, for all of us.
Deb, how about North Thurston?
I think it's a very similar situation in North Thurston. We're required to submit a 4-year budget to OSPI. I believe this is the first year we've been required to do that. So when we look at the 1920 school year, right now, based on the assumptions we made in building our budget, we would be at an $8.5 million deficit. So the sustainability of the new funding model is really what isn't working. I think for most people, when they hear that McCleary has been solved or education has been fully funded, they would have an expectation that programs would continue as expected. And unfortunately, as I look at the future, I think we're going to need to make some choices unless something changes this legislative session.
Well, speaking about this legislative session, the legislature will convene before we meet again at the table. So is this going to be something that goes forward to the legislature? Are there groups working to push this ahead so that our legislators hear this? Brian, do you want to take a stab at that?
I think we're in a conundrum. We've got a political climate in the country and in the state that I don't know that education's going to become the major topic in the November elections. That concerns me because I think that one of the commitments that was made to us by legislators was we'll take a look at McCleary, let's implement it, and then let's fix things ongoing. And I think that most of the local politicians across the state are running that we fix McCleary, we don't have to touch it again, and that really concerns me because there are inequities, there are things that we have to look at. I think a significant conversation has to come forward about special education services for students. Right now, we are not fully funded at the state and federal level for the services we have to provide for special needs students. And the answer is move all of those expenditures into our reduced levies. And that's not fully funding education. So I think that's a conversation that has to go forward. I know Patrick mentioned it, but we do have to talk about how we reduce the inequities of how the initial year of McCleary was implemented. Not sure that that's going to be a major platform for people running for office. I think they're going to run more on we fixed it and let's go on to other things. So I'm worried about that.
Yeah, but platform or not, there's a problem that exists that needs to go to whomever is in office. So how does that message get there? Anybody want to?
Well, I think part of the problem is that historically we've been pretty unified across the state around issues like special education. That's something that's underfunded in every district, I think, around the state. But because this funding was implemented inequitably, there are quiet places out there. And when I say quiet, they're fine, right? I mean, there were places that got 18% and 24% regionalization. Imagine getting your apportionment, and here's 1/4 more on top of that, right? And so there are people that don't need to go and lobby the legislature or advocate because they're okay. And I think that makes it difficult. And to the levy piece, one of the things that they said is they arbitrarily said, your levy is going to be reduced to you can collect either $1.50 per $1,000 of assessed value or $2,500 per student, whichever is less. And I'm not exactly sure why they picked that formula, but that didn't hurt some people, right? There are certain districts that were collecting a levy at $1.24 per 1,000, and they were like, oh, moving up to $1.50, I'd actually collect more. And so their levy collection is going to be very similar to what they were already collecting, or it's going to be very minimally reduced. And some of those districts are also getting 18 and 24% regionalization, and some of them have a low mix factor. So you're not going to hear those people lobbying for fixes. And why would they? They don't need one. But there's going to be people talking to each other around the state and collectively finding out. It's kind of the walking wounded. We're going to find out who we are. We're going to go collectively, and we're going to have to make that real strong appeal, because we won't be able to compete with the surrounding districts with these higher wages and things like that. We won't be able to do it.
Yeah, because pre-McCleary, everybody was in the same boat. Everybody was asking for the same thing: fully fund education. Go to the yeah. So the educational community statewide was speaking from the same script, pretty much. But now what has happened? So I'm clear with it. Is, you know, you're all in a situation where McCleary hasn't helped your districts, and to ask another district who's funded, got everything they need, everything's going, to come and say change my funding so to help them, it's a hard ask. Yeah. So
I would add that, you know, we're in ongoing conversations with our local legislators, and recent conversations I've had with them indicate that this is very political, like Brian was saying. Democrats are hopeful that they will control the governor's office and both chambers. If that happens, what we're hearing is that they plan to come back to this problem and try and help solve it with even more revenue. And as I've asked, what are those ideas? I'm hearing things like, well, maybe we could finally pass a capital gains tax in Washington State. I'm also hearing an interesting idea, which would be, well, you're telling us we took too much of your local levy. Maybe we could let you keep more of that. Well, the fundamental premise of the McCleary case was an over-reliance on levies. And the answer I get to that is, well, John, they're now for enrichment, and that's outside of basic ed, so maybe we're okay with that now. My prediction is, yeah, I could use the relief in Tumwater, but at the same time, it will create the same inequities that led to the McCleary case. How do you reconcile that?
you'll end up back where you were.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting and political, and none of us can really predict where that goes. But I've also talked to legislators who are Republicans who are strongly against those ideas because they believe that a major investment's already been made and that we need to find a way to create fixes that are just smarter ways to spread the existing money that was out there. The challenge with that is when you told Everett School District, we're going to give you $15,000 more per teacher than we're giving Tumwater, how do you suddenly take that away from them when they've made promises with that new model? I don't know how you do that.
Did anybody have anything else they want to add to the conversation? So it's still a puzzle that some pieces are missing from, it sounds like, and we hope that we can get our legislature to look at it in a reasonable way. But that, as you said, it's political, and it's a hard time to deal with anything that's got a political overtone to it, just in general. Let's look at what's going on in your districts relative to things that are coming up this year. So new projects, new programs or initiatives, capital projects, that kind of stuff. I'm going to start with you, John. New programs or initiatives coming up?
I'll start with programs. We're excited with our early learning effort to pilot an idea we've taken from the Bellingham School District. It's called Transition Kindergarten. And all of us have a growing number of kindergarten students that come through the door at 5 years old, not quite ready for kindergarten. And so all of us are working on ways to reach out to preschool families, you know, age 3 to 5, and what can we do with our local providers to help increase preparation for kindergarten. Well, this idea is pretty simple. It says in January, February, about the semester point in the school year, what if we created a half-year kindergarten program where the kids that are going to attend kindergarten all year the next school year get kind of a half-year jump start. And we teach them how to do kindergarten. And we backfill maybe some of the kindergarten readiness skills they haven't gotten quite yet. And so with the partnerships we've already developed in Tumwater with our early learning community, we have a pretty good idea who those kids and families are that might really benefit from that. So at Black Lake Elementary, we're planning to open at least one section, maybe two, this winter of Transition Kindergarten, and we're relying on our friends in Bellingham for how they went about preparing and planning for that. So that's one program that would be new for us this year.
Can I jump in just for a second? When you say you're finding more and more children who aren't quite ready for kindergarten, where are they lacking? What kinds of things are young children not getting in their early education?
Well, in Tumwater, and my peers here can speak for their districts, there's now a statewide assessment for kindergarten students that measures different dimensions of readiness. One of those is social emotional readiness, and in Tumwater that's been one of our lowest scoring areas of readiness. So when I say ready for kindergarten, how do you line up? Right. How do you share? How do you deal with a lunchroom and obtaining your lunch if you eat school lunch? How do you open that really challenging milk carton? Things like that that people really don't think about, but in kindergarten you're literally teaching those very basic kinds of things about how to do school. How do you solve disagreements with another kindergartner? Right. Those social emotional things, not all of our kids are getting at home. And some of them have had very limited opportunities to even be in a social environment with other kids. So the real challenge is kindergarten students that come to us, and kindergarten might be one of their first experiences in a group of children. So that's why.
Yeah. Okay, great. Deb, how about you? New programs or initiatives?
Well, I just wanted to share, last year all of the school districts did a push in March to register children for kindergarten for the upcoming year. And some of the things that we shared with parents is it is important for children to know how to take care of things for themselves, you know, whether it's tying their shoes or opening a milk carton. And I think that those kinds of supports for parents is really helpful. This summer we did a Jump Start to Kindergarten program in North Thurston, and we only had kindergarten children come to the school, and so that we could put all of our attention on kindergarten students and their families. And what we've heard anecdotally is that parents really appreciated that individual attention that their children received. It was just a 4-day program, and it was held in August at a few of our elementary schools. So we're going to review that and see if that helps with that transition. This year, we're continuing with a focus district-wide on attendance. And our motto is in school, on time, all day, every day. And that some of the things that we implemented last year, making sure that parents know when their children aren't present, how their child's attendance compares to a norm or an expectation. We did that through phone calls and through communications from the principal's office, from the superintendent's office. This year we're going to implement what we're describing as nudge letters. And for a parent whose child's attendance is falling below where we would expect it to be, they'll receive a letter in the mail that provides support and then also shows the parent how their child's attendance compares to where the child's attendance should be. And it's intended to help parents understand, I mean, you know what you know, and so maybe if your child is in kindergarten, you think it's okay if your child doesn't attend every day. So we want to help parents understand that attendance is really important every single year.
Good. Patrick. new programs or initiatives?
Well, this is my second year in the Olympia School District, so I'm feeling much more at home and getting a better understanding of the community and what we're doing. And one of the things that's become even more and more crystal clear is the incredible work ethic and dedication of our staff and our teachers. And so to start off this school year, we've had all sorts of different trainings to prepare our staff to best meet the needs of our students. But one thing particularly that I want to highlight, and I talked about it, I think the last time we were together, is we have the good fortune in the Olympia School District to have a very supportive community that approved a ballot measure for technology. We passed a technology levy, and as part of that technology levy, which had many different components to it, one of them was a one-to-one initiative for devices, Chromebook in this case, that we are going to be giving to our secondary students to take it home, just like a textbook. The price of those items now, as we've all talked about before, is about the same as an AP textbook. And all of us in the work that we do, we pull out our device and we're doing that type of work all the time. Our students have never lived in a world without a cell phone. They've never lived in a world where they don't see their parents and friends and community members on a device. It makes complete sense. So we are starting that, piloting that this year at two of our middle schools, at Reeves Middle School and Marshall Middle School. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday with those schools. And the interesting thing is the students were kind of like, yeah, right, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like they were like, wow. You know, it was like, yeah, okay, great. We're going to take this because this is what we do. And there's a really strong academic component to that, obviously, that one of the things that technology does for us, which we haven't been able to do in the past, is it allows us to customize and individualize like never before. So if we have students that need different reading levels, maybe you need to translate into a different language, maybe we want to get exposure to something outside of our direct community, technology allows us to do all those things. So we're really excited about that component. But like we also talked about, there's a plus and minus to technology, and I think we've talked about it as this group too, is that technology can also be overwhelming. It can also impact us mentally, emotionally. We were talking about kindergartners coming in with those social emotional skills. So a big part of our one-to-one initiative rollout is this idea of digital well-being, digital wellness. We talked about Maslow's hierarchy, and almost, at the bottom are those basic things, and people nowadays say Wi-Fi is a basic need. Well, at the top, digital well-being is a basic need. You need to be able to handle technology in a healthy way. And so we have started to do some of that training with our teachers. We're looking for best practices that are out there around that. So we're really excited about that. And that should, after the pilot, we'll roll that out to all of our secondary schools next year. That's the plan. And the only other item I would want to mention is that we are in year 2 of developing our strategic plan rolling forward. And we're really excited. Our school board this summer created some really unique student outcomes that are going to be the true north for all of our decision making and all of our strategic planning and action plans for our schools. And it's on our website. I would encourage people to look at it because I think it's a little outside of the box. There's the traditional academic achievement and global collaborative thinking and all that in there, but there's stuff in there about compassion and kindness, which I know North Thurston's done a lot of work on. There's stuff in there about mental well-being. There's stuff in there about addressing bias in society and within ourselves. And I think that's unique. And so we're out in our community right now getting input about those, and we're going to continue to do this sort of live editing process with the hope that by November we'll have those solidified and start picking the metrics, which is going to be hard. How do you measure those things? And then the action plan that goes with it. So those are 2 really big things happening in Olympia this year.
Great. Brian, how about Yelm?
Well, we've really focused on partnerships within our community. We take great pride to say it's Yelm Community Schools for a reason. And so we have launched multiple programs with South Puget Sound Community College. Our distance from SPSCC is a barrier for some families. And that starts with our college and the high school program. We have 2 separate programs, and we have 21 courses this year articulated that our students can stay on campus and earn college credit starting in the sophomore year. But we've also allowed SPSCC to come onto our campus and teach classes at night and on weekends. Our students can have access to that. Our community can have access to those courses, and we're really excited that our goal is to create within Yelm the ability to earn an AA degree, and we want to extend that to our adults as well. And the one that really tugs at my heart the most is we started what's called High School 21. And what we found is in surveying our parents about what supports that they need for their kids, they were asking us, can you help me get a GED, or can you help me get my high school diploma? And so we had our first registration meetings. We had 42 adults came in, and they're going to be earning their high school diploma with SBSCC and using our campus to do that. So we're really, really proud of that. One capital success that I'd like to talk about is we built a new road. As we've struggled to pass our bonds, our high school sits on a very busy street, and so we created a new road called Tornado Alley that goes out the opposite direction and joins in with a lighted intersection, and it's really taken a lot of traffic in front of the school away, and it is so much safer for our pedestrian kids. They're not crossing busy streets without lights and those kind of things. So we're really proud of that, and we'll be doing, since we have a little bit of money this year, not next year, we're doing an upgrade to our stadium as well. We need to get our facilities for our athletes up to par with our neighbors, and they just aren't right now.
Okay. So you mentioned a capital project. Let's go on around, and are there any capital projects coming up in the Tumwater District this year?
Yes, two significant ones. East Olympia Elementary School is actually nearing its completion of a major renovation, I'll say, because it didn't add a whole lot of extra space, but a lot of basic systems, HVAC and those kinds of things have been approved, along with new flooring surfaces, more energy efficient lighting and windows, those kinds of things. This very similar project is just beginning at Tumwater Hill Elementary, and so if you drive near those sites, you're going to see a whole lot of construction activity going on. And so those are the big ones, and then we're looking forward to breaking ground this year on a new alternative learning center that will be on the Newmarket Skills Center campus that will house a variety of programs, some special education programs, our high school alternative program, and then we're interested in the future in maybe looking at a 9th and 10th grade career and technical ed opportunity there to maybe complement what's already happening at Newmarket. So having conversations about those things.
Great. Deb, I know there's some capital things happening in North Thurston.
Sure. Well, North Thurston High School is still under construction, and if people drive by, they'll see that a lot has been accomplished on the outside of the building. This particular phase is really focused on the inside of the building and renovating. We put in well, it looks like a huge hole right now in the middle of the building in order to provide natural light to inside classrooms. So there will be several new classrooms that we'll be working on this year. And that should be completed around January, and then phase 3 of the project will start, which will include quite a bit of outside work, including a bus loop and removal of portables, and that will continue on through January through next fall. Another big project, and many people aren't aware of it because this elementary school is kind of tucked back into a neighborhood, but Pleasant Glade Elementary School is undergoing a major modernization. It's amazing to see the work that has already been accomplished. Huge shout out to our teachers and staff who prepared for the opening of school on time, because there were tight timelines to get everything accomplished. We have changed the roads to provide a separate bus loop from the parent drop-off, and then the front of the building looks brand new. And so it significant changes inside the building as well as outside the building, and that construction will continue throughout the year.
Great. Patrick.
Similarly, I would like to give a shout out to our teachers and our capital project staff for the projects we have going on in Olympia. We just did a couple of grand openings on our mini building project. So we implemented 4 mini buildings at our elementary schools, and our last 2 just opened right before school started at Centennial Elementary and at McLean. Those were the 2 last mini buildings that we completed. But McLean and Centennial and Roosevelt Elementary all now have big interior renovations of the old building going on. And it's just so hard to do teaching and learning well when you've got all that going on. There's so many distractions, and our teachers and our principals and our staff have been amazing throughout that process. Some other big things that are coming up are at our high schools, at Capitol High School and Olympia High School. Capitol, we're going to be building a brand new theater and some space there that's going to help our dramatic and performing arts programs at Capitol. And then at Olympia High School, we're doing a pretty significant classroom additions, about 23 new classrooms to remove portables that are there and include some science labs to better help meet the 3-credit science requirement. And so we're really excited about that. And then after that, we'll also be doing some work around Avanti High School, our alternative high school, to get them the facility they need to continue providing alternative options for our students. So lots happening. Again, we're very fortunate to have a supportive community that passed our bond back in 2016, and we're grateful for that. And we're doing good work to get that all done for our students.
We're going to give you a chance to add, if you want to add to anything else that's coming up. You built a road. Are there other things?
Well, we didn't pass our bond last February. We missed it by 60 votes. So we've engaged a significant new set of eyes and new voices within our community, trying to say, what will our community support? And so those committee meetings and community meetings will be going on throughout the next 4 months, and I believe we'll go out for another bond measure in February. Okay. And that'll be really important. We have 2 buildings that are in need of strong upgrading, but we have lots of needs within the district. We haven't had a bond measure passed since 2003, and then the next one before that was 1989. So we've got some work to do, and our community is responding. We're happy with the response we've seen. So there's some determination there, and I think we'll get there.
John, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, this often raises a little bit of confusion because an earlier topic in our show was about the challenges we're facing with funding, and you just heard a whole lot of spending going on, right? And so I think it's important for your viewers to understand that in the 3 districts that are paying for these projects with bond funding, it's often stated this way: bonds are for building and levies are for learning. We cannot use this bond funding to increase wages and salaries in general education, and that's often a confusion out there. I have some staff, some families, some community members asking, well, why don't you just not do this project and instead increase spending in the classroom using that money? It's not legal to do that, and so I just want to make sure that clarification is
That's a
out
great
there.
clarification. Yeah. Does anybody else have, anybody else have bonds coming up next year? Yeah, I'm the only one. Okay, great. We're kind of getting toward the end of our time. So are there any things, really fun things, specific things you're really looking forward to in this school year? It doesn't necessarily have to be classroom related. Could be that, special football game or whatever. So Deb, I'm going to start with you. Anything coming up this year that you're like, can't wait till we do that?
Well, it's already started, and we have a district-wide theme this year, Everyone Belongs, and we produced a short video that features 3 programs that help students feel a sense of belonging. We know, based on research that's been done and a survey that we surveyed all of our students last year from grades 4 through 12. And one of the indicators for student success is belonging and identity. And so we're really excited to have that as our district-wide theme and to work within each of our schools to implement a social-emotional learning curriculum, specifically in some schools where they're piloting it, but efforts that help students to build relationship, to connect to their school community. Either one of our strategic plan outcomes is to have all students engaged in some activity outside of the regular school day. And so those opportunities help students to feel like they belong. So we're excited about that work.
Great. Patrick.
Well, it's a hard thing to say, Deb, because so much of what we do in our schools, I think, is fun, right? My background is particularly in secondary. I was a middle school principal, high school assistant principal, and a lot of my district level work was done at the secondary level. But I just particularly love being around the elementary students. And it might be because I didn't get as much chance to do that. I rode the bus with some elementary kids recently, and a first grader next to me spent probably 10 minutes talking to me, telling me how his glasses were bendable. And here, come on, try them, see how bendable they are. And I just never got that from a high schooler, And so spending time with our students in our schools is something that I just look forward to every year. I'm really excited to see where we end up with some of our mental health work this year, because we've made it such an emphasis, not just with our one-to-one rollout, but if you look at the Healthy Youth Survey data, and we've talked about this before, the metrics around anxiety and depression and suicide is going in the wrong direction. And so we're really taking a close look at what are we doing in our health classes, what are we doing with our counselors, how are we partnering with outside groups like I know Tumwater and other groups are doing to really address this, because it's getting close to, if it's not already there, it certainly is for some families, a crisis. And so the work that we're going to do around that is something that I'm not excited so much that it's fun, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can better meet the needs of our students and our families that are struggling with those issues.
Okay. Brian.
We're really in the early planning phases, but very excited about a community safety series that we're launching in Yelm, and that's a really strong partnership between our city and the school district, and we're going to tackle some very difficult issues, and we're putting on 4 different seminars or sessions within our community around in different schools around the area of, are we prepared as a community for an active shooter scenario? We're going to delve into human trafficking, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and cyber safety. And then we're going to look at positive parenting, and then we're also looking at mental and physical health supports for kids. So the format for those will be panel discussions, but also vendors will be present so that families can engage and talk about how can we find supports if you have questions in these areas. But there are questions our parents are asking they're anxious about. Are their kids safe when they go to school? And this is a wonderful opportunity to really tackle those issues, and we're excited about it. I think the last year we launched our Graduate Yelm initiative across our community, and we've been out trying to get businesses, churches, and organizations to join in the conversation about graduation, because we know that starts in kindergarten. We just located our 30th partnership, and our goal this year is to get to 100. And so we're spending a lot of time showing folks how kindergarten kids and elementary kids can really start preparing for graduation in a positive and fun way. So that's really exciting to see elementary kids singing fight songs of their adopted university, and it just makes for great times in schools and good connections with our community.
Great. John.
Brian's story earlier about bringing adults back in to earn their diploma reminds me that I think one of the highlights of my year at the very end of the school year last year was celebrating with a student that had left us after his 4 years without graduating. And we now have a concerted effort to find all of those kids that we can, invite them back, and figure out what it takes to get them to the finish line. This particular student made it, and not only wanted to come in and receive a diploma in some formal way, but his whole family called us and said, can we come in? We want to bring a cake in. We want to really celebrate this, because he didn't get the same kind of celebration at a ceremony. And we felt like we were part of that kid's family for about an hour, and we even created a little program, and I said a few words. I was able to hand him a diploma just like we do at graduation. And so we're excited to keep that effort alive and well this coming year, and at the same time celebrate that our 4-year graduation rates now at both of our comprehensive high schools are into the mid 90% range. That takes some doing, and I know we're not alone in the community here with that goal and that success. But I'm not sure folks realize how much work our staff truly engage in, going above and beyond the academic frame to do some outreach to families, including home visits. And I've mentioned our community schools effort here before, but that's expanding next year to deepen the work we do to break down the barriers kids and families face in the non-academic frame, so that they're more able to really benefit from what we're providing in our instructional program. So some success stories that we're really having fun with.
Great. Okay. Well, I want to thank you. Did I give you a chance?
You did.
I'm sorry. I couldn't remember where I started.
I have other good
I was
news
like,
if you want
we
to
can
hear
just
more.
keep going. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today. I know it's hard to get all of you together at the same time, so we do appreciate that you take time out of your busy schedule to come talk about education and what's going on in our local districts. And we want to thank you for joining us too. Remember, if you're the parent of a preschool child, read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for their education. And while you're at it, throw in some counting games to get them interested in math. If you're the parent of a school-age child, get involved in your child's education. There are many ways that parents can volunteer at their children's school. Talk to your child's teacher or principal, or go to the school's website to see how you can connect. Thanks for joining us here at the Superintendent's Roundtable. We'll see you again soon.